Welcome to The Art of Medicine, the program that explores the arts, business, and clinical aspects of the practice of medicine. I'm your host, Dr. Andrew Wilner. Today, I have two special guests, Jim Elliott and Tinamarie Hernandez. They're here to talk about a phenomenal, thriving nonprofit called Diveheart.org. Jim founded Diveheart more than 20 years ago, and he's going to share his personal story. Tinamarie is the executive director and will tell us about an exciting project called the Deep Pool. Incidentally, I learned about Diveheart.org from Dave Hirsch, founder of the 21st Century Dads Foundation. Dave is scheduled to appear on the show in the next few weeks. But before we get started, I'd like to thank our sponsor, locumstory.com. Maybe you're curious about locums and how it might fit into your career story. But do you know all the different reasons physicians choose locums and how it works for them? At locumstory.com, you can hear firsthand stories as diverse as physicians themselves. There's not one solution for everyone. The variety of opportunities might surprise you. Locum Story is an unbiased educational resource. It has tools that let you explore trends in your specialty and compare different locums agencies. There's even a simple quiz to see if locums is right for you. Do your own research at locumstory.com. It's easy. And now to my guests, welcome Jim Elliott and Tinamarie Hernandez. Thanks for coming.
Hello, thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you.
Oh, that's I'm excited. I learned to dive when I was 16. I remember first dive in the pool. I had the regulator in my mouth and I looked around and I don't know, my eyes must have been huge because it's like I'm underwater and I'm breathing. It's like, whoa, this is not natural. And this is really exciting. And ever since then, diving has been my hobby and passion, and I'm underwater. In fact, as much as I'm enjoying talking to you two guys, I would much rather be underwater if I had the chance. But I'm kind of landlocked here in Memphis, Tennessee, and I've got a day job. So my diving is vacations only. But it is fantastic. But you've put a twist on diving, and it's diving for people with disabilities. So, Jim, Diveheart's it's more than 20 years, which I think is a fantastic story of success because not every nonprofit, continues kind of ad infinitum. And I think you've set it up that it's going to go on forever because it's got a purpose and a value. So tell us how it all came about.
Well, it's really funny because I had no burning passion to learn to scuba dive. I actually was a media guy. So I was in college working for the newspaper, and I thought, if I ever meet someone like Jacques Cousteau, I better know how to scuba dive, right? So it was just another arrow in my quiver, and I took it. And what you just said exactly happened to me. First of all, you're breathing underwater, going, "Oh my God, this is wow!" And then when I did I did all my local stuff here in Chicagoland in the pool. Then I went to the Keys, and when you're hovering 20 feet below the surface and 20 feet above the reef, I looked down and went, "Oh my God, this is like being a superhero, an astronaut. This is for me." In my mind, I said I want to be an instructor someday. Of course, you life gets in the way. You have a family and kids and all that stuff. But I was very comfortable around people with disabilities. My dad was a disabled Army vet. I walked a friend to school who had cerebral palsy, so bullies wouldn't pick on him. I had a one-armed scoutmaster who could tie knots better with his mouth and his hand than we could with two hands. And then, of course, I had children, and my oldest daughter was born blind. When she struggled with being blind, when they mainstreamed her with sighted children, she really had a problem. And so I got her involved in downhill skiing, and so started guiding and teaching blind skiers in the mid-'80s when I was at WGN Radio, and completely turned her life around. I saw it change a lot of lives, all the time thinking back to diving, going, wow, this would really work with diving, getting people out of wheelchairs, getting them standing up underwater. And that to this day is one of the great thrills for me, is to get somebody, and it takes me the better part of 2 days to get a blind person acclimated enough to guide them down a hill with the gear and the transitioning turns and all that, and listening to commands. But in 30 minutes, I can take you, if you've never been in the water, get you out of your wheelchair and have you standing up, and you look down in the pool and go, "Oh my God, I'm standing up for the first time since my injury." And we do that for physical disabilities, but Tinamarie will tell you we work with cognitive disabilities as well.
Yes, thank you for mentioning that. We do use scuba diving as a therapy, and if nothing else, it's calming of the mind. It helps people focus. We've actually helped researchers do research on this. So we have something more, a little bit more than just anecdotal evidence, but that's part of why we want to, build this facility. It's part of why we do what we do in, day out. We want to get people into the water, and we do get people into the water. We help change their lives because they change the perspective, if nothing else, on how they think about themselves and the abilities that they have. So our focus is on ability, not necessarily disability. When we get someone in the water, we talk about what can you do, and let's use those abilities and get you to be a scuba diver.
Yeah, I'm almost finished reading a fascinating book called Neurotribes by Steve Silverman, which is an extensive, detailed history of autism from way, way back when, 100 years ago. Dr. Asperger had these kids. But one of the things that comes out of the book that I think is articulated in a way that I never appreciated is that disabilities are context specific. And they give the example of, people with autism don't tend to like to socialize as a general rule. But if they're in their own room reading a book, it's not a disability. And similarly, if you're underwater and you can't walk, not really a problem, right?
Exactly.
And,
And
you don't need a wheelchair underwater. So that the disability is really context specific and can be overcome by changing the environment rather than by changing the person, which of course is what we would like to do if we could, in the sense of somebody who couldn't walk, for example, working on that. But maybe a lot easier to put them in a weightless environment where they don't have to fight gravity.
right. And to go back to your autism example, what we find is we dive in teams. So here, people on the autism spectrum, when they're underwater, they're part of a team, and you don't see a lot of people on the autism spectrum going out and joining a team, right? But to be able to think of, I'm part of a team when I dive. I don't have to talk to them necessarily. We communicate, but I think that it's part of, again, we find that one of the big benefits is the idea of acceptance and inclusivity. We deal with a lot of people who find themselves on the outside looking in, and doing this activity with us and being part of what we call the Diveheart family. You're now part of the inside, and you're part of an inside that's pretty cool because you get to go underwater and you're doing things that, when you mention it to people on land, they're like, "Oh, that's scary, and aren't you afraid of this, and aren't you afraid of that?" And they're not. And so it helps in so many ways.
Yeah, we helped facilitate the first research on autism and scuba therapy with Midwestern University here in the Downers Grove area where we're based. And we had a documentary called Adapting to Dive, which has received 11 International Film Festival awards since about a year and a half. And we were so impressed with it. We invited the filmmaker to come back on 9 more trips and do a bunch of profiles. In fact, he just did profiles on doctors from Mayo Clinic because we were asked to present at their clinic in last May, and they were impressed and invited us to come back this May. But regarding autism, David Marsh, the filmmaker, did a piece that we just won an award for this last year through an organization we're part of called Sharing Air, and it was about Chris.
Share care.
Share Care. What did I say? Sharing
Sharing
Air.
Air.
Oh no, that's my that's another story. That's a book I wrote, so I'll tell you about that later. But yeah, Share Care and Chris, this video profile talks to the parents talk, and Chris talks, and the dad says exactly like that. You mentioned tribe, and he goes, she's found her tribe. And we found that in the study that Midwestern did, the being underwater eliminates surface distractions and regular triggers. The ambient pressure is soothing, and the cool factor is completely off the charts. So now we take video and photos of the kids and send it home with them, and they're showing it off to everybody. And now they're divers. Now they self-identify as a diver and not somebody with a disability, which is really important for their self-esteem and confidence.
Do they find it carries over? In other words, do they interact more with their, classmates now that they have a better self-image? Are
I
they
think
able?
that the what parents have told me, or even other people, is that um just the overall performance at school helps. They find a lot of times, and this goes across the board for any disability or any person struggling with something, um, they find themselves going, if I can do scuba diving, maybe I'll try that, wall climbing course, or maybe I'll try something else. And they put themselves out there. We've actually had volunteers whose parents have said, she's a really quiet person, or he doesn't really interact a lot. But since they started volunteering for you, they have changed as how
Mm.
much they are finding themselves going out there and trying different things. So we call it the ripple effect. We find that it really spreads its extensions out, and how they touches the lives of not just the people we dive with, but their families and their friends and the coworkers that work with the parents, because they see this positiveness coming from them.
Yeah,
And
go ahead.
I was just going to add that maybe part of that ripple is to help diminish the stigma of disabilities, which, still exists. If you see, an Olympian who has a disability, or, a kid in class who's having trouble getting to class because of his wheelchair, but he's winning awards underwater, or he's just going on these exotic trips, or telling stories about, funny fish he saw. Maybe that is another ripple that's certainly just has incredible value.
Yeah, we're very fortunate. We're both Rotarians, and we get to present to a lot of Rotary clubs and other organizations. In fact, this week, Tinamarie will be receiving something from a national organization called Disability Matters, and she'll be in Milwaukee this week receiving that. But what we like to say is that this really isn't about scuba diving, believe it or not. It's about taking the unrealized human potential that exists in an individual with a disability and creating a paradigm shift. So now it's not Johnny or Jane in a wheelchair; it's Johnny or Jane, the scuba diver. They self-identify that way. And then what we try to do is encourage them to go on and take on other challenges, and kind of try to guide them to be good stewards of the environment, oceanography, marine biology, coral reef restoration. We try to work that in, kind of gently guide them in that direction if that's possible.
I'm going to tell one more story that I haven't thought of for over 40 years. When I had just learned to scuba dive, and I was always interested in photography. I even tried to make my underwater camera. In those days, you couldn't just buy one easily off the shelf. I went on a trip to learn to do underwater photography with a guy who was a very, very famous, underwater photographer. His pictures were always in the scuba magazines. And I remember that he had a very severe limp. He had, I don't know if he was born with a club foot or something like that, but he was a regular guy, but he limped very, obviously. Yeah, it wasn't a disability in the sense that he could get around, but it certainly was noticeable, and something that, people would see. And I remember him kind of hobbling around on the boat. And then when we got into the water, he was like Superman. That disability vanished. It evaporated. And he's a world famous, underwater photographer. I don't even know if he's still alive. But I guess that was a lesson, about it was probably about 50 years ago that happened. That that I now remember thanks to you guys. So thank you for that.
Well, part of what Mayo Clinic was doing last year was focusing on, and this year too, focusing on as we get older, right? I don't know how many baby boomers are created every day, right?
I think it's 60, what,
A
I don't
lot.
know. There's a lot. And every day it's something like 15,000 people turn 65 this year.
But as we get older, the Mayo Clinic has wanted to say, how can we keep people diving? How can we keep them active? This
Mm.
is such a forgiving, wonderful activity. Instead of trying to, if you're 70 something years old and you're not in the best shape, but you love diving, you don't have to stop, but you don't have to carry your kit to the transom and jump in. Take it off, hand it to the dive master, and then climb out on the ladder. I mean, that's why you tip them anyway. That's what that's what I do. But it's really forgiving, and we have people with degrading disability like Parkinson's, for example. We'll have someone be a buddy, and then they'll develop Parkinson's, and then they now become kind of an adaptive diver. We don't call them handicapped or disabled, and we'll help them then get in the water. And then once in the water, boom, like you said, they're Superman or Superwoman.
Jim, you mentioned earlier that you had this concept that maybe someday you'd be a dive instructor, which I think you are. Is there a special training to that you need to dive with people with disabilities, and how does one obtain it?
Well, we're actually, yeah, we're a training agency, and we've actually changed the industry. When I started doing this in '97, I couldn't find another program out there. So I started, actually, I was a PADI instructor too. And you have open water, and then you have a scuba diver certification if you can't complete all the open water certification requirements. So what I would do if I was comfortable that I could put them in a scuba diver card and they could dive with a dive master or instructor anywhere in the world, that was actually my first adaptive certification. I just kind of modified what I had as a tool as a PADI instructor. And then in 2014, we launched our own adaptive program. But what we've done over the last 23 years is become really kind of a guide in the industry, because now even PADI has an adaptive techniques program that really takes the low-hanging fruit, and it's a Cliff Notes version of what we do. And I thank Drew Richardson, the CEO of PADI, because I said, what you do is you create awareness. And then once an instructor gets to a point and goes, this is a little bit over my head, that's when they call Diveheart, and they come to Diveheart. So consequently, we've had a lot of instructors all over the world with all agencies that have come to us for our adaptive training, which is really the leader in the industry.
Right. We just celebrated 10 years as an agency. So we train uh, divers who might need assistance, so adaptive divers who might need a team to help them versus an open water card. And then we also train the buddies, advanced buddies, instructors, instructor trainers that help teach the people who want to assist someone in the water.
So if a dive instructor wants to get certified as a dive instructor who can help people with disabilities, is it a 1-day course, a 1-week course, a 1-year course? How is it set up?
It depends on the instructor they go with. So some of our instructors, they would do like, all right, we're going to work the next 4 weekends. We're going to be working on, all the things if they do something local. A lot of times they can use a 4-day course. It's a 4-day course for people, like one of our instructors in the Keys. He offers it regularly. He'll also go and travel to the group. If they have, a certain amount of people, he'll go to them. If they come on one of our trips, we use the whole week
Hmm.
to train. And what's great is if they come on one of our trips, it's an immersive trip. So you're meeting people with disabilities right away. You're not just doing the training. Not all instructors have someone that can dive with people and really help them learn how to work with someone. When you were speaking before about the gentleman that you worked with for photography, what I have found is that, meeting someone with a disability, if you haven't been exposed to people from your family or from friends, it might be intimidating. And that's why we created the immersive part of our training, because it is intimidating even as an instructor, because they may have never worked with someone with a disability of any sort. So that's why we offer it, because we want people to be comfortable. We had a group of students from Eckerd University train, and then we did a special trip, a kind of a mission trip with them down to the Keys. And one of the comments at the end of the trip was, someone said, I didn't realize I could be friends with someone with a disability in this way. And it may sound naive, but I was so happy he said it, because he said it from the heart. And it's so true, right? You don't know who you can be friends with. And I think the intimidation factor sometimes holds people back. And your life is so much more enriched when you do know people with so many different body types, mind types, all of that just makes all of us better.
And our adaptive certification requires you, if you want to be an instructor or an advanced buddy, which is a level we created for dive masters and rescue divers that are really good in the water and might be able to handle a quadriplegic as the lead in an advanced adaptive dive team, you need 30 experiences. Then they don't have to be 30 complete dives, but during the course of a dive, we have a signal where we rotate. So if you're a quadriplegic, Tinamarie might be your forward buddy, I might be your rearward buddy, can help him with your buoyancy. And then we have a third support diver as part of the 4-person team. And then what we do is 15 minutes into the dive, we might rotate. And then Tinamarie might take over the buoyancy, and I will take over communications, out of air emergencies, and things like that. And those are the protocols we work with. And So that's why the total immersion trips that Tina referred to are so powerful. And we've had, to some people's credit, they have a dive operation and they come several times on our trips just to get that confidence. It's like they come to get certified first, then they start bringing their dive masters and their buddies, and then they start bringing adaptive divers. And we have we've helped spin off 50 nonprofits around the country that do similar stuff to what we do. One's in Oregon, and they came 5 times. And now we were in Roatan last year, and we had almost 20 people on the trip, the adaptive trip. They were on the other end of Roatan, and they had 40 people. So they're really thriving and doing wonderful.
Right.
Well, Jim, you were in business before all this happened. So, it all sounds like a fairy tale. How does it, where does the money come from? How does this actually function?
Well, I was recruited out of college by the Chicago Tribune, went to WGN radio and caught a window. I was in the advertising side after 7 years as a journalist. And then, but I caught the Ditka years, right? When WGN had the Ditka, had the Bears. So it was a very, very good run. And then I helped start up a TV station for the Tribune Company and did well in the media business and just said, I want to try in diving what I've been doing in skiing and walked away from a successful career to do this. And I live very Spartan, but when you work 7 days a week and you don't know, and your off button is broken, it's all you're doing is working, right? So, but I love it. So
Yeah, his passion really helps keep the donations coming in, and we are fully funded by donors.
yeah, and I don't draw a salary, so it's all passion.
We do have 3 people that do draw salaries, however.
So
And
it's a nonprofit. What about if a child or someone with disability hears about your program, wants to come? Do they need to pay their way, or will insurance pay, or is it covered by your donations?
yeah, interesting that you say that. So our pool programs, the ones that we run directly, Diveheart runs, are free. And they're free to anyone who wants to come, and they're free for as many times as they want to come now until infinitum, right? Um, if they want to come on a trip or they want to get training, so they need to be certified to come on a trip, there's where some money is involved. If they don't have the money, we help them joint fundraise so that we can get them to where they want to be and give them the experience they're looking for. We have very generous donors, and we are typically able to get everything we need so that we can bring someone on a trip. And that, that's kind of how we do it for the most part.
Yeah, it's a little bit like a church mission trip.
Oh,
go
I wanted to comment about insurance. We do have more than one diver who every trip she comes on, she treats it as a therapy. And so she charges in. I don't know how she does it, so don't call me asking me, how do I get this on my insurance? But I know she has commented that she uses her insurance benefits to go on dive trips.
That's a long-term goal with the facility too, is to have our therapists and who are working with patients or individuals in the pool to be able to bill insurance at some point for them. And we'll facilitate everything.
Well,
but that's another revenue stream, right?
All right. So there's a new project, this deep pool. What's the deal with that?
Well, it's more than just one pool. It's a facility. There'll be 3 pools. But the deep pool is, the big one.
It's deep, right? How deep?
It's going to be 130 to 150 feet.
Whoa, deep.
Yeah, depending on how much money we can raise. That is the pool that we have the 3 patents on. So we have 3 patents on the design and on other features for the pool. We'll have a way of kind of closing down certain depths if we're not intending to go to a certain depth that day. We'll be able to kind of bar it so that someone doesn't accidentally go down to the bottom.
Whoops, there goes my camera. That's happened.
Right, exactly. Yeah, oops. But it's going to be the facility where we have a starter pool. We'll have a showcase / therapy pool that'll go to 25 feet, and then we'll have the deep pool. And we're really excited about the different activities that can happen there, inviting in the community, inviting in the world, really. But there'll be so many different things, but our primary objective is research, rehabilitation, education, therapies of various types,
Mhm.
so that we can continue the mission that we've been doing for the past 23 years.
Yeah, and there's 4 deep pools in the world now, and they're all basically the same design. They have a ledge and a ledge basically, and then in Dubai's case, a 150-foot water tower sleeve. Well, if you put 20 divers here, you can't put 20 here and 20 here because if there's an emergency here, boom, they have to go through each other. So each atmosphere has a 10-foot ledge, and we put 4 divers 15 feet apart on every ledge. 16 can go at 150 feet, and then 99 we would have 10 around 99 feet spread out, and then 66, and then 33. And the first 20 feet is going to be glass. So it's going to be like going to an aquarium. So families will be able to watch their loved ones. But when you add up all of the divers potentially at capacity someday when we have it, we figure we can almost put 300 people in the deepest pool that we have at one time.
So if someone wants to donate to this good cause, what do they do?
Go to our website. So it's www.diveheart.org, and it'll pop up the Deep Pool Project. Go on that page and you'll see a number of different things. You can donate. Obviously, money is wonderful, but you can also donate your time and talent. We're looking for people to help us get the word out, help us create social media, share our story, share what we're trying to do. Right now, I'm playing the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon being the millionaires and billionaires and people with means and companies with means that could help us build this pool.
We're fortunate we have a couple $1 million already in in-kind donations. We've been working for a decade with the architects and the engineers and the business planners and the lawyers who've made this all possible, which is really exciting. But now it's going to be like cash because the shovel's not going in the ground until we're able to raise money for the pool. So we're out there trying to it's really awareness now. So thank you for doing this because it just takes really one person. I mean, if the total cost for the whole facility, which by the way, our architects want to make net zero, right? Geothermal,
Wow.
solar. Yeah, it's
Mhm.
very ambitious, but this is what better time to do a net zero facility and draw from energy from the earth to do that. And there are companies out there now that say you can get free energy anywhere if you go deep enough. And we would use that to heat the pool because we want it to be 93 degrees so people with thermal regulation issues don't become hypothermic in the pool. An 80-degree high school pool isn't going to cut it. And if you've ever put a quadriplegic in a 7 mil wetsuit, you'll understand that that gets old after a while.
This is fantastic. Well, before we wrap up, is there anything either of you would like to add?
I really believe that being a journalist, a media guy, that a picture's worth 1,000 words. And I think that if you went to our YouTube channel and clicked on playlists, you could get military stories and medical stories and symposiums and docs on Diveheart and divers with heart and that profiles individuals with TBI and autism and spinal cord injuries and those stories told by the people that have those abilities or disabilities are way more powerful than us talking about it.
Yeah, we find that it's very inspiring. I watch them all the time, and I still am moved. So, for people watching them for the first time, I feel like it's probably a winner type of thing. I would say go to our website, reach out to us if you want to volunteer. There's this epidemic of loneliness right now and the loss of purpose for a lot of people. And I feel like just go out and volunteer anywhere, but we'd love you to volunteer for Diveheart. But I feel like that I meet people all the time, and not everyone's going to be my best friend, but meet friends all the time, potential friends, future friends, current friends. And I think that that's one of the ways we can overcome this epidemic of loneliness is to just get out there, put yourself out there.
Yeah, people can volunteer for us from their couch by just simply sharing the stories, the documentary.
Mm.
I mean, we just had it, we just posted on it, and it had a whole bunch of shares. And I just was thinking about all the people then that they share it with, and they share it with, and they share it with, and the person is going to help us with the money for this pool, or the people are people we haven't even met yet. Really, it's gonna, we have a ground game like when we're talking to Rotary clubs and things like that, or we're having business meetings. But then with the long game is really the documentary and NBC Nightly News with Brian Williams and from years ago, or different stories and things that we can share with people that don't know us. One of our largest donors came to us after watching the documentary. They're not divers, and they didn't know us from Adam, but they called us and said, "My husband and I were crying last night. Where we send a check?" And that was 5 years ago. And now they help us every year more and more, which is a gift.
It is. You don't have to be a diver to be part of Diveheart.
Right.
Well, Jim Elliott and Tinamarie Hernandez, thanks for joining me on The Art of Medicine.
Thank you.
Before we close, I'd like to give another thanks to our sponsor, locumstory.com, a resource where providers can get real, unbiased answers about locum tenens. I'm Dr. Andrew Wilner. See you next time. This program is hosted, edited, and produced by Andrew Wilner, MD, FACP, FAAN. Guests receive no financial compensation for their appearance on The Art of Medicine. Andrew Wilner, MD, is Associate Professor of Neurology at the University of Tennessee Health Science Center, Memphis, Tennessee. Views, thoughts, and opinions expressed on this program belong solely to Dr. Wilner and his guests, and not necessarily to their employers, organizations, or other group or individual. While this program intends to be informative, it is meant for entertainment purposes only. The Art of Medicine does not offer professional financial, legal, or medical advice. Dr. Wilner and his guests assume no responsibility or liability for any damages, financial or otherwise, that arise in connection with consuming this program's content. Thanks for watching. For more episodes of The Art of Medicine, please subscribe. www.andrewwilner.com